Welcome to the Roots of the Spirit podcast. I'm your host, Spirit Tawfiq. My mother, Minnie Jean, became a symbol of the civil rights movement at age 15 when she and 8 other Black students tried to desegregate Central High School as a violent mob of segregationists raged outside. As the civil rights movement grew, she met my father, a white man, and the two married during a time when interracial marriage was illegal. Being the daughter of civil rights activists who fled to Canada and raised me and my 5 siblings on a farm in the wilderness, well, it's complicated. Join me and inspiring guests for honest conversations about identity, race, and racism. Welcome to Roots of the Spirit. Welcome to the Roots of the Spirit podcast. Thank you as always for listening, sharing, liking, and reviewing the podcast, especially over on Apple Podcasts. If you have left a review in the past, you hold a special place in my heart. It truly means a lot. And if this episode or past or future episodes resonate with you, please share it with a friend. And thanks to those of you who have already done so. Today, I'm going to dive right into this incredibly rich and inspirational conversation. I had the pleasure of meeting our special guest a couple years ago online, and we'll talk about and laugh about how that all came to be. But in essence, we have developed a friendship and a connection virtually, and I am so inspired by what she is sharing, all the gifts that she's sharing with the world, that I was like, ooh, I have to have Prudence on the podcast. So without further ado, allow me to introduce Prudence Kalu. Prudence Kalu is a reminderer and inspirer who is passionate about reminding people of who we are and our internal knowing within. She's the creator of a vibrant Facebook group called All Things Possible. All Things Possible is a community and platform where creators freely exchange pictures, quotes, memes, and inspirational content, provoking contemplation, dialogue, and reminders of our sacred nature. It is a joyful, uplifting community where learning, personal development, and enchanting moments intertwine. Please welcome Prudence Kalu to the Roots of the Spirit podcast. Prudence, welcome to the Roots of the Spirit podcast. I am absolutely honored and ecstatic to have you on the show.
Vice versa, to be here. Thank you.
So as you may know, the purpose of the podcast is to have honest conversations about identity, race, and racism and other intersecting social justice issues. And this season, which is season 3, I'm centering conversations around authenticity, courage, and truth. I feel as though when I think about authenticity, courage, and truth, you are literally the embodiment of someone I know personally, just living it, living into it, the essence, your work, your aura, everything. And we'll get into that deeply in just a moment. But I also like to let the listeners know how we became acquainted. And as it relates to you and I think it's like a really cute and funny story. So I'll let you tell it.
I was saying earlier too, when I was thinking about getting ready to come on, it's so amazing the connection that we feel towards each other, and we have never met each other in person, but it feels like we know each other. And so I was also thinking how sometimes we meet people to really meet other people that really impact our lives, right? So like your brother, I think I told you was your brother. And so now this is going out to the world, so he may hear it. But I remember when I first seen him, I was like, oh my gosh, who's this? And I said hi or something to him in a message, and he's like, do I know you? And I said, from my dreams.
And this is my brother, Isaiah.
Isaiah, yes. And so we made mutual friends, and like I observed what he was doing and what he's doing out in the world and admired that. And then I started seeing pictures of his family. And I was like, goodness, every single one of you guys are beautiful. And then learn the history of who your mom is, and that really like impacted me. But it was something about your aura, and I think a friend requested you too. And then we just started communicating on posts back and forth. And I just just how you say you feel towards me, I was like a fangirl. I felt like you were somebody so special and was like, we're friends, and she talks back to me. I was so excited about that. And then I asked you to come on I was doing the lives on Facebook for that year, and you came on and shared, and just knowing your history and what you're doing out in the world, just one of those things for real where you're glad to just know someone and be like you feel you're a part of it because you know them. And so that's how we became friends. And I fangirl, but I also can't wait to meet you in person. I feel like
Well,
it's gonna happen.
it absolutely is. It already has in my mind. It's
Yes,
so just, I can't kind of echo enough what you have said. And I find it to be such a beautiful um, blessing you have given me in describing that and the gracious words that you have given to me to like wash over me because I feel as though you and I connecting, seeing what you're doing and seeing your spirit and seeing what you put out into the world, all of the goodness, the inspiration, the questions that you ask to have me thinking about my life. And we'll talk about that in just a moment, like, so our listeners are aware of your platform, All
yes,
Things Possible, and probably many other layers to your work and what you're passionate about. But I say that to say, me becoming acquainted with you is directly related to my healing process. Like I may have seen you even before, and I'm not saying I did, but I'm using it as a metaphor for my
mhm,
journey. But where I was really able to see you and also see myself. And so I am priding myself in being more transparent, being more authentic, because, one might think, what in the world does race, racism, identity have to do with authenticity, courage, and truth? I think it has everything because it can hold us back.
absolutely.
So I just want to say thank you so much.
Oh, thank you too. Yeah, there's so much in that too that we can go on to. But yeah, it is there's something that you said in the introduction about this being about authenticity. And I I am being in the what is it environment, a group amongst people who believe in and know and aware of frequency healing and all these different things. That is one of the highest vibration. We all say it's love, and love is authenticity when you can be completely authentic. And another thing I love that you just said too was that to meet me in that space where you were on your healing journey, to be able to see what it was and to see, like, that is what it is. When I post what I originally started posting for, I started posting for reminders for myself,
Mm.
because I would have such highs and then such lows, such highs and such lows. So I wanted to put something on my feed that when I was in a low, I would remember. So I'd post for that and I'd go back and I'd be like, oh yeah, that's right. Oh yeah, that's right. And then people started saying, oh, them too. And I realized, oh, this whole thing that we say we are all as one is, it's true in a sense, because if they're going through in their own storyline, they can tell me their story why they felt this was true. And it may not be exact as mine's,
Mhm.
but it was around the same kind of plot that was happening. So we all identified with this. I started realizing, oh wow, how much more connected we are. And at one point, to blend in this with authenticity, I started posting because I was like, oh, people need to know this. People need to know this. And I posted, and I would not get a lot of feedback on it.
Mhm.
And I heard Abraham Hicks talking about when we are doing healing work and for people, when we go into the idea that people need this from us because this is our gift of what we do, we don't really accomplish what it is, what we're really trying to do. But if we go into this because we love it,
Mhm.
then that's when you do your healing work. And so I started changing my posts for people need to hear this too. I need to remember this is why I was posting for me, for me, for me. And then I started having, like you said, your tribe come along. You know,
Oof.
the authentic tribe comes along. So you try to, and I know sometimes too, we're told to look for that tribe that is maybe doing a better space than or what you're trying to achieve, I guess. Maybe not better or worse is the right label for it. But if you're trying to accomplish more in your life and you see people who are doing that, and we go to them, and sometimes we do it. I believe in fake it till you make it, but sometimes you fake it so much that you're faking it the whole time. So to come and just be authentic for yourself, and then have those people meet you, and you learn from each other how to rise up to the vibration that you want to be.
Whoa, so much goodness. Oh my goodness, so many gems. I'm like running around scrambling, trying to catch them all. Wow.
Don't poke your pad, yeah.
You said so many amazing things, and I'm going to like hold them and kind of like bring them back as we go along. But I would love to set the stage with your inspiration for creating All Things Possible. Can you describe it for someone who has never heard of it?
One of the things that started All Things Possible was that I'll just go back a little bit just to give her like a story. So my mom, I'm Indian and African, born in Trinidad. My mom raised us up in the Hindu and Christian culture. And then at one point she said, you guys have the right to choose whoever you want to believe, and just know that there's something bigger than you. Right. So with my brother's influence, I dove into the church, into Christianity. And so I was in there for a very long 17 years. And I remember the last couple of months of me going to church, I was with a pastor, Pastor Rogers, and he asked a question. He was telling how names in the Bible were changed because of what their message was to be, or whatever God had them to do. And he thought, go home tonight and ask God, what is your name? What would be your name changed to? And I went home and I asked God, and all I could hear was All Things Possible. That's my name. Look at your life and look at all the things that has unfolded. It would be impossible for somebody to understand, but all things are possible through, God, if you believe. And so my name became All Things Possible in my head. And then like 2 days later, I was supposed in a group, and I would post certain things that I guess they did not want in their group posting. And I was like, I'm going to create my own space then, so that I can say what I want to, how I want to. And we have experiments. It's at the time where all of this information is flowing in. And so I wanted to experiment. Is writing 5 times down for 5 days really going to work? Is using this meditation really going to work? Is our mind really the placebo effect? How can we do that? And so I wanted to create a space where we could experiment on a lot of the things that were coming in without judgment of religion, race, or anything else, class of financial status. And so I created All Things Possible, and it wasn't with the intention of to try to fill it up with as much people. It was the intention of people who really want to be and participate in that, to be in here. And that's how All Things Possible started. And then of course, like everybody's like, you should go on camera, you should talk, you should. And I was like, no, not yet. A lot of inner work had to be done, because I guess maybe even kind of like what you asking me to be on camera, I'm not very comfortable. Even though my daughter's gonna say, Mom, I think that you're the most confident person. I said, well, I did a really good job pretending, because I had to pretend I was at first. And I do believe, like I said, in fake it until you make it. But then there becomes a point where you're just faking it and you're not really feeling it. So you're not feeling content with what you're trying to get. And so I had to get to a space where I was comfortable with myself, and then I started, I went on a live with someone else and triggered something for me on how to do the lives. And that's how that started. And I started interviewing people from all over the world, just finding out about different experiments and different tools of healing and teachings, and just what people were interested in their lives, what their passion was. And that was absolutely fun too for a while. Yeah. And so that's how All Things Possible came about. And right now I'm in the space of where I'm still doing, I think we always forever will be doing inner work. And, I think a lot of our lives is getting clear with what we want, because then we get to what we think we want and then realize, oh no, it needs to be defined more. And then, so it's always going to be a work to be done. But I don't have any specific projects I'm working on besides myself, and just like really being authentic from there, and just let whatever comes to me next flow, to me next.
Um, hello, that is incredible. What rises right to the top for me is what you just said, is the project that you're working on is yourself. There's
Yeah.
quotes, I don't know who to attribute it to, but the greatest project we'll ever work on is ourselves.
Yeah.
And so it's just incredible what you have created and the impact that you've had and continue to have, and how you can literally like shift people's lives, the way of thinking, the way of being, so much. So thank you so much. And of course, at the end, folks will be invited to join all
Yeah.
things possible.
Yes.
But you said so many things that I relate to personally, in terms of our healing journey, in terms of the way we see ourselves. And one of the things that I'm kind of intentional about in my conversations, more so, over the last season and this season in particular, is like doing my best to not cause harm. And so, as we dive into kind of the next part of our conversation, please know that it is all to what's comfortable to you to talk about and nothing beyond that. So, like talking about our past, talking about race, racism, discrimination of various forms, like whatever's comfortable for you and whatever is not comfortable, we don't have to talk about it. So, you mentioned your background. I love to hear about folks' background and journey. You have such a beautiful background. I would love to hear about, what was it like growing up in this beautiful home of it just sounds amazing, like having such a glorious opportunity to see things and experience things, a variety of different experiences and culture. So I'll leave it at that. To would love for you to take us on a journey.
Yeah, so like I said, born in the West Indies. We came over to America when I was turning 12 that week. I turned 12. We came through New York and was there for about 6 months and then moved to Florida. And that's pretty much where I grew up, and I'm still in Florida. But I know one of the things that you talk about that you're passionate about, and I know that stems from your family, obviously, and your history too, is with like racism and stuff like that. When we first came over here, I was in West Palm Beach, and at the time it was a predominantly white area and a few Spanish people, a lot of Spanish people maybe. And so when I went in, I remember going to school here for the first time. And of course, my accent is different. We would say tree for the number three. And so they would laugh at me or say different things and laugh at me. Um, I remember being in the school and not being able to speak Spanish. They would be like, "Where are you? What are you from then?" Or the Black community would come up to me and pull my hair to see if it was real, to say, "Well, if you're Black, how come your hair's like?" It was really at the time. Now we're everywhere and everybody knows everybody. It's such a different um, world now we live in. But at the time, it was different for me too. And then I'm 6 feet tall and I'm a plus size woman. I've always been, even as a teenager. So a lot of Indian people didn't identify me as an Indian at the time. Now there are taller Indians. It sounds so silly, but it was real something I experienced. Being a tall plus size woman, they wouldn't really identify me as Indian. So I was kind of like in this place of where I had to make my own culture. I looked at my culture, both the Indian and the African, what my grandmother taught me, knowing from the West Indies, and found them and certain things to be so beautiful, and just knew that I was a part of that, and I exuded that, regardless they accepted me or not. And then I found, maybe it was all in my head, because then I found that people became more accepting because I just had this like, I knew the beauty in the culture and held on to that. And I don't know, I felt like it then started showing back out to me. But with the racism, of course, that's like everywhere in so many different ways, with work, school, different things like that I did experience. As I became older, for me, what I realized is, because my oldest daughter is very passionate about that, about Black Lives Matters, and just like um and it could be because she gets even more racism because she is more dark skinned than I am and looks more African than I do. So she gets it in a different way. And she's very passionate about it. But I told her what worked for me is not necessarily what's working for her, which was for me was just kind of like ignore it and then treat everybody with love, but for her, she feels passionate. She needs to know, they need to know, to respect the rights that we have, and so we kind of help balance each other with that when it comes to race. For me, learning about that, I don't feel like I experience it a lot anymore now, because maybe my focus is on the love part of it. I don't know how else to say it, but the love part of it. And when I see it in the news and stuff like that, I feel like it's trying to invoke a certain vibration for me, so I stay away from it. Doesn't mean that it's not there. I've been asking too, like my creators, how do I deal with that? Because just because I'm not looking at it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. But I know if I look at it, I add to that fight for it. So how do I find a balance in that? And I'm still working on that. I found that just looking at it and blessing it as best as I can when it comes to racism and discrimination, and is the way that I can deal with it right now. I don't know if that even answers what you were asking, but I feel like just showing it love. Like I don't know how else to look at it but to show it love, and keep feeling like people are going to get past it. But I feel like the more we feed into it, the more is what we're going to see. So if you fight for something, it's more fight you're going to see. But if you send love to it, and it might be ignorant or bliss, some people say, but that's what I see. I see more love. I don't see as much racism and hatred and discrimination anymore. That I'm older, that I'm not looking in that direction of that's what I'm getting because I'm tall, because I don't see it as much anymore. Now I see acceptance more. So
Wow, that's beautiful. And it is so like it's fabulous because you are able to like fuse all of the things that I love to talk about, your background and then also like your experience with
yeah,
discrimination, etc. And it's interesting because I'm a fusion of you and your daughter, the way you describe. I'm a fusion.
yes,
Because it is, it's so overwhelming.
yeah,
And, I was talking to my mother just the other day, and she said one of the intentions of oppression is to distract us, to get us off our path, to try to break
yes,
us down, to try to kill our spirit. And joy is a form of resistance, and love is a form of resistance. And that standing tall in who we are is very
yeah,
much a form of resistance. And we all have our own way. And
yeah,
we need all the different ways. I think that's the beauty of a movement or a people or humanity, really, is the variety of ways in which we live, operate, individually, collectively. That's the beauty. And I also think about various greats. I think Dr. Martin Luther King, Mother Teresa, and probably
yeah,
many others who have said, like, standing for something as opposed to fighting against something, and
yeah,
the energy that comes along with that.
yeah.
So I have to balance because I have a lot of rage.
Yes. It's in our DNA too. Our families have been fighting for, that's what I'm saying. I can't be totally ignorant to it either, which I know sometimes it can come across that way to some people when I say I'm not focusing my attention on that. But I feel like it's in our DNA because we have had to deal with it so much. And we know that whole scientific evidence now that our eggs that were in our grandmother are us, and so it's carrying on through us too, just DNA wise. And then so when our mind and our spirit says, okay, we're choosing something different, it's going to be an internal chemical fight also to change that DNA for the next generations that are coming. So not being ignorant to it, knowing our past is always important to know where we're going. I believe that a lot of people have different views on looking back. I like to look back to see where I'm coming from, not to dwell on what we lost or what we should have done, but it really helps me focus more of where, right, all of us, direction we're heading into. So not to be ignorant to that these issues are out in the world. But one of the things I asked myself this morning when I was getting ready to come on, what is it that you want, if you could tell people? And I know this is going to be a part of your thing too, but I just put this in here now. is what would be your message that you want to tell people? I think this is the time that it's not no longer up to the world to fix. It's so individually, because when we do individually the work, it is collectively happening. And this goes with racism, health, spirituality, love, acceptance, all of these different things. It is not about what they're supposed to do. It is about what am I supposed to do. When we do that, we fix so much internal that collectively it all joins up together. It's like the story I said at the beginning. We all have different storylines of how it's unfolding, but the plot is the same. Well, then we will be collectively plotted together in that love and that vibration that we're all saying we want, but we're all looking for somebody else to do it.
Once again, I'm being showered with all of this wisdom. You have said so much that has me thinking deeply about many things. Um, whew. You talked about the intergenerational carrying on. I'll tell you a story. I'm like, anytime something resonates with me, the way that I kind of interpret it and describe it is kind of through a story.
Mm-hmm.
Mentioned that we are like inside of our mothers and our grandmothers,
Mm-hmm.
really, because, all the eggs that a woman has, she's born with. And so I read this book called, I, I can't remember the name of it off by heart. If I do remember it, I'll add it to the show notes. But in essence, it was about intergenerational trauma. And after reading the book, I was pondering what you just described, like
Mm-hmm.
literally inside their body as they're going through life and
Mm-hmm.
experiencing. And I don't remember where I was, but my mother and I are co-writing her memoir. So it's kind of ever present, our relationship. And
Mm-hmm.
so one day I literally just was jolted. I said, I was with my mother at Central High School.
Oh my God, I just got chills.
And I just broke down into tears.
Oh my gosh, I have it all over. Yeah, yeah,
Because
yeah,
there's so much about myself I didn't really understand. Like,
yes,
yes, I can pinpoint stuff about hypervigilance and stuff like that, but I was like, whoa.
yeah,
So it sent me down this path of
yeah.
healing, etc. And to bring it right back to you, because I only inserted that story to illustrate that I completely understand what you're saying, and I've experienced it viscerally myself and still trying to understand it. But when you speak, I hear the beauty and gloriousness of the wisdom and power that's coming through your lineage and the confidence. That's what I hear. That's what I see. And that's to me is so beautiful because you're carrying that forward. And as you're describing the way in which, you are and etc., we're all different. And I just think about you raised your daughter and you have raised your children and you have infused them with everything that they have. So your daughter can then go out and be herself and speak the way she wants to speak. And so this motherhood journey is the biggest form of activism there could ever possibly be.
And think that's how we were that for our parents too. We were that what our children's being to us. We are that for our parents too. I want to touch on something you just said there too that would and made me think of my oldest daughter and my all my children. But um growing up again, because our parents didn't know certain things, right? They not I don't want to say inflicted. I feel like that's such a harsh word, but things were done that they didn't know different. Like my mom said and called names, even that I don't really hold that to her anymore because I know now as a mom where she was coming from. She was meaning out, but she didn't know how to say it, so it came out that way because I've caught myself. And the first time I did that and caught myself, um, I realized like, oh my God, I'm doing the same exact thing to my daughter. I need to figure out how to do this differently because, like I told you, grew up always people saying, "Oh, you're so beautiful, you're so beautiful," but I never felt that because of my mom, to put it simple. But it wasn't her fault, and I don't want people to be like, "Oh my God, your mom is so mean," but it because of my mom. And so I realized one of the things I had to do again with the teachings that were coming in at that time. I'm sorry, there is a massive motorcycle crew passing by.
No, this is real life. I mean, authenticity. Hello.
Oh my goodness, it's so funny. I'm like, what's happening? Okay, so but what she I realized, okay, one of the things would be it would be because of our weight. And I was not gonna pressure her. I was going to allow her to be herself and just and a lot of times I see her now when she gets dressed up and go out, I'm like, that's how I see you and people are seeing you is how I think people thought I was. And like you just naturally have this confidence. And I was like, I wish that's how I was when I was younger. And she was like, well, I'm this way because of you. You helped me to be able to not care what anybody else thinks. And so if her small little friends or whatever wants, she would, and she's gorgeous. Like she really exhibits that. And it's not a pretend for her, which I was so happy I was able to change that in her DNA so that when she brings forth, at least that part is take, you know what I mean? And the other thing too is that in my family, I seen a picture of my mom when she was little, and I realized where my grandmother was in the back or my great grandmother was in the background, and I can see in our lineage where we were all so fearful of lack. And I said I was needing to change that in my generation coming forth, and I love that my daughter shows that. She says, Mom, even if this is the end of the whatever, she goes, more is always coming. She's like, there's always more coming. Like, and it's true. And I was like, oh my God, she taught me. So we do have that. Why I said all that is to remind ourselves when we listen to this later and to whoever else listens, is that we do have that power to change our lineage for the futures that are coming now. And all it takes is really observing yourself,
Mhm.
not beating up and judging and jumping on yourself for when you recognize it's wrong. And you might do it 50 or 500 more times until you get it. Don't beat yourself up for trying to change. And take your time. And really, I realized the right questions you ask yourself will bring forth the answer that it'll just pop in or however, the universe has the most amazing ways to send us the messages that we need. Don't beat yourself up for it and allow just the universe to work. And sometimes we're expecting to see it but it'll show itself. Like my daughter saying that to me, realize, oh, it did, it worked, it worked. Or it's working
Wow.
still, it's still working. So we can change for the future that's coming after us now.
Wow. That is so special that what you have passed down and what like you never it's almost like your children give you feedback on who you are.
Yes,
And
that's
it's
what it
like
is.
such a like
Yes,
spiritual feedback. And my child needs on me, he's about to be 3, but the feedback is profound, even though it's not
yes,
very, but I can
yes.
imagine that your children are young adults. And so
Oh, it
reflecting
is
back
working.
who you are and your teachings.
You know how I know it's working for you? You are it for your mom. Your whole clan, your whole family is it for your mom. It's changed, or she changed it, and it's affected your whole clan right there, siblings, and your children's children are changing it.
Mm,
So it is working. And that's it.
thank you so much. I just
Yeah.
feel that that's very meaningful because yeah, it's been a journey. And
Yeah.
the kinship to, I look at you and I'm like, you're just regal and elegant and gorgeous and beautiful and charming and all of those things. And it, I can relate to the world saying, can you not see yourself? Can you not see yourself? And then one day through this journey and just stepping outside of myself.
Hmm.
And it's not, I mean, the physical is it's part of our life experience, but it shapes and informs our experience. And
Yes.
so to me, I was telling my husband the other day, I'm like, I can't take my racism oppression filter off. So I always look at the systems that have created the environment for us to not be able to walk in our full authenticity, to like dampen our courage and try to stamp out our truth. And it it's like a righteous rage that I have. And that's why
Yeah.
I'm like, let's talk about it. And I
Yeah.
just what would you say to, and you may have had conversations or just, I'm thinking about your children, but the greater folks, beyond like the broader message, like whether it's directly to your children or the broader message about how can we begin to excavate all of the layers of hate and racism and um, patriarchy. How can we begin that process? Like, whether we're just getting there or we're already creaking into the process, how does one stop and begin to walk back to themselves to begin a journey of like really loving yourself?
It's a good question. I don't have the full answer, but I can tell you from so far in my experience in life what I think and see works so far, and I'm sure there's more levels to it, is observing where you are now. Looking back, like I was talking about earlier, we have come a long effing way. We've come a long way. Look at you. I don't care, even if you're light skinned, you're a Black woman having your own podcast. You live in a beautiful, think about where we had to be before as slaves and all the crap, even, 50s. And I know we are still dealing with a lot of underlying things now, but there's more Black people in powerful positions than ever been. We had a Black president. Okay. And there's more Black people. So, first of all, to recognize that there's not a whole lot of fight that we have to do the way that they were fighting. There's fine tuning now that we're doing. And that fine tuning is not on working on a group of people, it is individual. That is how we will see the fruits of what the work has been done so far. If we now individually fine tune in ourselves, like you said, it's that DNA carrying on of that rage that's still there because we are in fight or flight mode. Even when it comes to just defending our positions in society or political or whatever. I'm not very familiar with political talk because I don't find any enjoyment in it, so I don't involve myself in it. But I know that there is a lot of prejudice and discrimination there, from women to race to all different things, right? But so the way I said, I don't know the answer fully of how we can fix it, but to shine light is individually. I really really strong right now about that. It is individually fine tuning now. It's no longer, I believe, such hard work. It is that when we start exhibiting, it's that thing that is contagious. You don't even have to do it to show anybody. You're just doing it, and people naturally glance and look. It's going to become contagious. It's like everything else, too. So I think my answer to my best right now would be just check and see how far, like even find out from your lineage, what they had to fight, what did they have to go through, and think about how you're living now. I'm not going through such a big fight like they are. We're living in houses now. We're not living in sheds or pig yards or whatever. We've come a long way. And yes, we have more to go, but that more to go is individualized, not collectively responsibility.
Yeah. So again, so much that I'm like processing, because each component of what you're saying could be its own like full
Yeah.
conversation. Because it's so amazing. I feel like for me, it's been trying to find the balance, because like my area of expertise is like anti-racism, and that has
Yeah.
been my work for like 20 plus years. And what I found through actually starting my own business and doing anti-racism work is the people who yield the power, like white men,
Mm-hmm.
they need it the most. So
Mm-hmm.
I was, I'm doing anti-racism work. This again is an analogy or metaphor, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
And, breaking down like, what is racism? How is it engineered? How can we play a role in reverse engineering it? In essence, that's just like a broad description. But my energy felt very much in the I'm fighting to get my message across. It felt very a fight, a struggle. And
Mm-hmm.
so in the mix, all this is happening during my healing, my own personal healing journey.
Mm-hmm.
A couple different things happened, and one of them was turning inward. And it was, that famous quote about when I was young, I wanted to change the world. And then I became wise and I decided I wanted to change myself, something to
Yes.
that effect. So I
Yes.
embodied that and I started on my healing journey, all while still continuing this work. And one of the things that ended up happening organically is I pivoted my focus. And that's when I launched in 2022 the Roots of the Spirit Healing and Joy Retreat for Black, Indigenous, and women of color.
Mm-hmm.
Because I felt as though my spirit was like, when I thought of what actually like brings me peace, what
Mm-hmm.
I'm passionate about, and can also lead to change. And I was like, let me refocus it. So not to say I've abandoned that, but I mentioned that again as kind of taking what you have said and refocusing what is actually more gentle, healing, and good for
Oh.
me. And then, in essence, my child and my family, because they need me too.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to think very diligently about how can I serve, but it's more so like, and I want to dive into this because you're like so awesome at provoking me to think about like our higher self. And I would love to talk about our higher self because to sum up what I'm
Yes.
describing how I received what you said. Thank you so much for sharing. But sometimes I feel like my higher self is running the show. I
Mm-hmm.
might be scrambling on the ground, but I've always had something leading me and guiding me, whether pushing, pulling, and I still have not relinquished control. I'm still having a hard time with surrender,
Mm-hmm.
but the higher self, and how does the higher self play into the foundation of what we've been talking about, but also in lining up and becoming more aligned with our authenticity, courage, and truth. It's a lot I
So much.
threw at you, so
Oh, it
choose
was
your own
so good too.
adventure.
I know. I was like, dang, I should have a pen and paper. Like, there's so much goodness of what you just said that I would like. So right here, this is one of the ways I'm going to call my higher self to remind me of all the points that are powerful that we want to hit back on. So that's one of the ways right there, just calling on your higher self. I love a couple of things. Your retreat. I want to hit on that really quick. That's one of the things that probably how we'll first meet. I would love to come to one of your retreats because that is what's powerful. And what I was going to say, and you already said it, and what's even more powerful is that the higher self doesn't need us to do anything. It's already doing it. One, because how you said for 20 years you were involved in the fight for freedom kind of thing, right? And now all of a sudden something happened with the includement of your child, your family, your husband, and just you doing that inner search helped you realize, how can I still be passionate about this, but you brought love to it now. It's not a fight. Now you said, let's heal. Now you said, let's encourage. What you're doing is finding your own tribe by being in your authenticity, still passionate about freedom and love, but you brought that now. So it's just, I was like, wow, I thought this was going to be super long, but it really just summed it up. Is the highest spirit is doing, once you're truly seeking, it's going to show itself to you. Okay, and it may show yourself to you in different form than it's showing itself to me, but it's the same form when it comes from love. The authenticity of it is love. And so when it shows itself to you, to make yourself familiar with your higher force, so that when it speaks, you know and you flow in that direction. You said it's time to transmit that fight into love, and that's what you're doing. And I think all of us too, in whatever healing comes, some people want to teach meditation, breathing techniques, some want to teach tapping, some wants to teach um chanting, or there's thousands if not millions now different tools that you can use to get yourself connected with a higher force. And that's why I believe the higher force, whatever you call that, is showing us that there is not just one way. There are that many ways to get in contact with what created you and this experience that we're experiencing, and how to best experience that, how to best live a life. And so your fight had to teach you, so that in your love moment, when you're sharing that, you can appreciate that fight. It wasn't in vain. It was meant to teach you too. All the bad, all that stuff. Once you recognize it, it's meant. Something happened this week. Well, I said something happened, but it was I'll just go back to what originally taught me this lesson was. I watched a movie, and it was a little girl. I don't remember the name of the movie, but the little girl got murdered. And it was like the whole city first started looking for this girl, and it was a young girl in the movie, and then the whole county started looking for the girl, and then the whole state went to look out for this girl. They ended up catching the person who murdered the child, and he went to prison in the movie. And while he was in prison, of course, he got beat up. Because this was a little girl, and it was so ridiculous. Something ended up happening in the movie where he like became a Christian, I think, in the movie, right? And then the town, so many different lives were affected because of this. And a lot of it was people became more protective, either was of their children, started showing their children more love, or started being more. And in the jail cell where he was, um, there were people that were coming in that did either horrible things like he did, and now he was here as a Christian. He was talking to people about God, and he changed his life completely while he was in there. And at the end of that movie was the first time a message came to him, was like, so things seem sometimes like it's so freaking horrible, but it affects so many different lives and different it really is that whole saying that they said one life to affect so many. It's like they made that sacrifice. That soul knew what it was coming to do, so that these many more souls can be relieved from it. And so um all those things that we've been through in the past that seem bad and that we're fighting to right now, that we're trying to get better from or whatever, is to come to a space where we know our higher selves is in control. I believe that. I don't care what you believe in and how you call it. I know there's something greater than us that's in control, or I should say that's guiding us, all of it, I guess, control, guiding us, experiencing with us also, because obviously we're still living, and I feel like it's experiencing through us too as we're learning. I believe that that power we call God is also learning. And so there's a formula to follow, because there's so many different formulas, but it's to really just get in contact with what you feel is your connection with God, and then familiarize so that when it speaks to you, you know to follow it. And then that's the best way. I feel like that's what you're doing. And I think that's what you're saying you're seeing me doing. And the people who we look at, that's what we see, that when you're doing what you feel intuitively tuned to follow, it automatically shines, and it exhibits love, and it exhibits authenticity. It exhibits all those things that are in that vibration of what we call God or love or source or whatever form you call it.
Questions, questions, questions. So many. Okay, so yeah, you have me thinking. I'm like way over there near like Jupiter.
I know it's with me too. And when you're saying things too, it's like it's really marinate. And this is the really cool thing about this is we'll finish our talk today and go, but it will still marinate, and more questions come, and more like, you know what I mean? And it's
That's the
just
thing, it's going to reverberate and continue to.
yeah.
One of the things that resonates with me just in this conversation is, in addition to the healing, like a part of my healing and everything I say is like in service to
Mm-hmm.
the community, to listeners, and kind of, as I will continue to say, as the artist Lena Waithe said, I tell my story so you may see fragments of yourself. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's in that spirit, in that service. But I think about my journey to my own spirituality, because I did not grow up with any religion. I think, to be honest, there was a reason why my parents did not expose us to any kind of organized religion. So it's something that we came to, or I personally, I'll speak for myself, have come to kind of on my own. I do believe, my mother introduced me to spirituality like in my early 20s in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
And I, came to my own awareness over time. But I say that to say, even when I look back to my childhood and I see like some of the most painful things that I experienced and the way that I was treated and the racism that myself and my siblings experienced, for some odd reason, as ugly as they made me feel, as non-belonging as they made me feel, like all of these things that I was diminished to, there was something telling me that that was not my truth. And
Mm-hmm.
as recent as 2 days ago, I'm writing for the memoir that I mentioned,
Mm-hmm.
talked about my fascination with the night sky, because I grew up on a farm, and the sky and being in the wilderness and like just sprinkled with stars, like bazillions
Oh,
of stars. The sky would spoke to my soul and told me
yes.
that I was a part of something bigger, even in the midst of just terror, really.
Yeah.
And I wasn't able to interpret that until like 2 days ago. But
Yeah.
I also want to recognize that I feel as though some of the spiritual leaders, they have these grand platforms. And I feel like there is spiritual bypassing is something that's very concerning to me. Well, Marianne Williamson is my hero because she is like very serious about talking about issues and saying that we can't be like spiritual teachers, leaders, etc., and not face injustice, not face like it's counterintuitive, it's completely. And so I'm just curious, like when you look out into the, let's just say the internet world and see these leaders with huge platforms and they don't say anything about Gaza, Black Lives Matter, indigenous stolen land, like all of these forms of oppression. Like, what are your thoughts on that?
I have a few. And some people may agree with some of them and some may not. That's like everything else. So I have a couple of views on that. The one thing is, again, I really believe that whole thing on what you fight against, you're going to see, because it's going to sound, I don't see any of that on my newsfeed. When it did pop up once or twice, I remember I looked at one, and then when I clicked it out, it was another one. I said, no, I'm not clicking it because I know what happens. The algorithm will start giving you that. So that to me gave evidence for me, truly what you look at is what's going to be reflected to you. That does not mean it's not experiencing out there. I am not experiencing it in my life. Does not mean when I hear other people talk about it, I send prayer and love to it. I know that this human experience is temporary, and each one of us will return to its original thing. So death is not a scary thought for me. Of course, anytime I think of any kid or anything like that, that's where it hurts too much sometimes for my body physically. It starts showing up as illness, depression, and so I don't prefer to look at it. Doesn't mean I'm trying to be ignorant of it. And the best way I can help in that situation, because I can't be over there physically doing anything or financially send anything to anybody, is to sit here and send it love. If you have a platform where you are that big, you have financially that you're able to help somehow, whatever, I feel that of course they should. They should. Maybe some of them are not talking about it because of the same observation. They don't want to put into it, and maybe they're doing it secretly. I'm hoping that's what people who have that. But if they're not, that's their judgment. I don't even know that's their consequences they have to deal with. If you're in a position to do something and you're not doing it, it may look like they're getting away from it, but we all know ultimately it's not. So even that part I leave up to the judgment of whatever I call God, a source, or that force that's handling that. Another thing to point out to my view on this is a lot of the big platforms, people, they're human just like us. They're saying the same things we're saying. Just sometimes they have said it something and caught it, or whatever plan the universe has, that particular person is in that position where they have so many followers or money or whatever it is, that power. that they're in that position maybe for other things too, not just for that particular fight for that cause. I don't have, of course, I feel like there's so many people who can help and do different ways to help. Maybe I don't know. Collectively, can you imagine if just 5 or 10 people who were in power said, "Let's do something," it could get done. We could tell them, get your can I cuss shit together. You could block that out. Get it together, and then if they do, that would be great. We would all feel happy. We all want them to do that because we'll feel happy because these people are happier, safer, alive. Shoot, a chance to experience life. I'll tell you this. I remember when I first started my journey, I was living in a little trailer. I was talking to the girls about this. I had like an out of body experience in the trailer I was living in, felt like it shook. And I remember I was like, you ever seen the Tyler Perry where he says, where he's talking to Mr. Brown, he said, Mr. Brown said, I was talking to myself and myself said, I was talking to God and God said, And I said, you mean to tell me if everybody's a part of you? This is when the realization was coming to me. Even the man down the street with the teeth missing and stink and smell. And God said, yep, that's part of me. I said, even the murderer? God said, yep, that's part of me. I mean, that's when that remembrance of that movie came in, that it looked like it's one bad thing to you, but there's really a bigger story that's unfolding. And I was like, that's really hard for me. Like my heart was like, I felt the house tremble because it was hard for me to accept that all of that is God, until I realized something happened in there in that quiet time, the shook, whatever, and realizing it looks like that way to you now because you are programmed to that, and in your flesh, this is what it looks like. But spiritually, it is all me. And so that's why I don't fights like that anymore. And when I see that injustice, I said, I believe that if there's something I can do, Spirit, I'm going to do it. But if it's nothing that I can really do, to get myself emotionally whelmed up for something I cannot do or control, or particular place that I can't, I'm causing more dis-ease to the situation and my body and the people who surrounded by me here. So if I can do it, do it. And then if you can't, send that love, that prayer, that whatever you believe in that would help, that you do for yourself, for your family, if something is wrong, pray, whatever, to them too. But if you can do it, do it. And if they can't, your judgment will be on you also, whether that be from your creator, from your own self, however, it'll be on you too. Yeah. Tell me, can I ask you? I know this is your podcast, but I want to hear, what would your answer be? What would you do? What do you feel to those people who are in that power where they should do something? What do you feel would be the best thing to do?
I've been thinking about this just because of the nature of the work that I do, and then also like
Mhm.
seeing a lot of silence. I guess you can say it's hard for me to answer that without.
Answer it with even all your experience. I want to hear just authentically, how would you feel, even with how you, what you deal with. Remember, you deal with things differently than I do here too. You have more even you have even more things where you're in with a lot more people. I'm here in my little town, this is what I wanted, in my little town by myself right here. So I'm only experiencing this much right now. You're out there in New York. You're experiencing this way more on a bigger level than I am. So I'm open to hear your part because, like I said, sometimes I shun myself, but I do like to expose myself to learn more that what's happening out there too, so that I can better send that energy to the best that I can.
There's so much, and it, like, we could literally spend the whole time talking about it, but there are different parts of me that would answer in a different way, because there are moments that I can, like, my full divine compassion can come forward and it can answer in a certain way. And then there are days where I'm so enraged and pissed off about what my mother went through and subsequently what her children had to experience as a result of her trauma and the intergenerational trauma. So there are days where I'm like, you have an obligation to speak up, like, especially white people of high privilege and high power. And then to the second layer is questioning, why don't you speak up? And then knowing many aspects of the answer, because you can lose your job, you can lose your platform, you can lose this, and you can lose that. And then why can you lose that? Because we live in the United States, and the United States stands for certain things and builds allyship and yields power with certain people and countries,
Mm-hmm.
makes it impossible for people to speak out. And so then I'm angry about that. And so there's so many different layers to it. But I guess you can say my answer comes with more questions. And so that's really kind of my whole way of being, is provoking conversation and instigating conversation and shaking the pot so that people can have productive conversations, because we have to be talking. And that to me is one of the very unfortunate things, is that we're not talking right now because we're terrified to speak. And then
Mm-hmm.
also the other component of spirit, the mother spirit, has to ask myself very difficult questions about, people ask me, they're like, how and when are you going to tell your child about all of this ugliness that is experienced in your lineage and the world? And then I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, I'm a different person answering that question.
Mm-hmm.
I want
Mm-hmm.
him to know.
Mm-hmm.
And so my point is, I feel as though if you have a lot of power, you have a lot of privilege, that you should speak up, period.
Oh,
But I mean, and I do understand the threat that is on us to say stay silent. So sometimes I'm like, so what about the threat? And then there's sometimes when I'm like, I need to maintain safety because I have to parent a child. So in other words, it's like so discombobulating. It's very personal to me.
how amazing, though. You said discombobulated to me, and I thought, how amazing you have all these different views. You know why? Because you can tell, you're hearing from me who believes I'm one of the collectives that's sending light and love, and that's important too. But the person who's fighting is important too. The person who's in there doing something is, all of it is important.
You are describing your way and your daughter's
Yeah.
way, and it's different, and we need all the ways.
All of
And that's
them,
the thing, like
including the fighter. And there are times that the fight, like you said, there's some days I'm gonna use the Indian. There's some days where I am Jesus, the love, the light, the bringer. And there's some days where I'm Mother Kali. I'm the mother that's going to fight for it. You wouldn't even believe that that freaking demon existed in that person. So they seem so. So there are different times when different parts of us do need to come out. And I love what you just said. And I think that you're perfect exactly how you are, because you have all those aspects to hit. Because I'm talking to you from a person who is not experiencing that right now, but you will identify with a person who is having a really hard time at their job because of their color or because of their whatever. You can identify and help. And you are in that position where even if it's just talking to them can help them step up out of that. You know what I mean? It doesn't have to be a whole crowd and a whole huge collective. It could be that one person, because then you trigger her to trigger to trigger to trigger. That's all that matters. And so I like your answer too very much. And I think that's very appropriate to be in the life that you are. You have these many different people around you to affect in such a way. And what you're doing your part. Just like how you said, those people, white people in power are supposed to, you're doing your part. You're allowing, like you said, there are times when silence is beneficial. It serves its purpose. And there's times where we need to speak up. We need to change and to change that, we need to speak about it. And in any relationship, right? In order for it to grow, for it to change, for it to bloom, it needs to be communication about it, or a situation or a job. If you want it to be better, you need to talk about it. And so what you're doing is a beautiful platform to create so people can, I, and all of us have an opportunity to share our, okay, let's show light and love. Okay, no, we need to fight for this. Okay, no, maybe we need to come up with a plan for this. Oh, all these different aspects are a part of the whole thing.
You also mentioned something about, you said, this is my experience. I think one of the blessings of my life was to have, after, when I was a young person, we moved from these small towns where we experienced a lot of racism. We moved to Ottawa, which is the capital city in Canada. And it was
Hmm.
extremely multicultural. And when I went into seventh grade, during that time, because of various wars and conditions, so many different countries, there was a wave of refugees, immigrants and refugees who are coming to Ottawa. And,
Mm-hmm.
you know, now that I'm a grown up and I understand things, it's because of Canada's policies to welcome immigrants and refugees. So I had the most beautiful representation of the world in my classroom. And so as a result of that proximity, I was able to learn different things that completely impacted my life. Like two of
Mm-hmm.
my little sister and I, best friends, were from Vietnam. And I didn't learn about the Vietnam War from a textbook. I learned about the impact of the Vietnam War through my friends and their families and their
Wow.
fight and their flight and their experience. You know, my high school sweetheart was a refugee from Cambodia, and being in his home and absorbing the just what we're talking about, the
Mm-hmm.
kind of like the balance of the amazing love, the respect, the reverence, but also the pain and the trauma.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't have learned that from a book. I learned that from real relationships. And so my fight is not only from my mother's experience, it comes from so many different places. And I feel like that's why my journey has been such, because I'm like, I'm obligated to share this because there's
Mm-hmm.
no way that I had all of these experiences that didn't seem connected, that now I'm like, no, there's huge value in that. Um, and then also, I just wanted to say that because I'm always a huge proponent of like, get out, see the world, be with
Yeah.
other people.
Yeah.
Like, it's
Yeah.
so important. And then one other thing is that you said, you know, you said earlier is about linear. That's something that's the theme that keeps coming up for me. Like, healing isn't linear, giving and reciprocity isn't linear. All of these things, like for some reason, linear is something that's been coming to me. And
Mm-hmm.
as it relates to our conversation about activism, I was so on a high last night because Beyonce just released her album, Cowboy.
I, I listened to it yesterday. That's so funny.
So Cowboy Carter comes out, and she has remade the song Blackbird. And the song
Mm.
Blackbird was written by Paul McCartney, and he was inspired to write it because of the Little Rock Nine. And so everyone is going
Wow.
crazy because Beyonce has, in her own way, in her own time, has shouted out the Little Rock Nine. And as
Yes.
a metaphor or more like a representation of what she stands for. And
Yeah.
she's been criticized so much for so much.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the things that I love about her and I love about our conversation using Beyonce as an analogy is in its own time and to be able to learn to be patient. That has
Oh,
been so difficult for me. Um, and I just feel like I know we have to wrap up, and this has been the most beautiful conversation, but is having patience, again, the balance of having patience, but then also looking to the past and saying, look at we should know what's happening now. We're going to regret doing nothing. And
yeah.
so that's me in essence. It's the paradox of like, we should know better, we should do better, and also healing, change, justice, injustice, the universe bending toward justice. It's not linear, and we might not see it in the moment, but there's like a greater
Mm-hmm.
justice, liberation on the horizon.
Tell me, in your mom, when she was a little girl, if there was a mixed girl who could be on TV having their own show to help other people voice, they couldn't be. You are. I just want to say, I know we're getting ready to wrap up too, but everything you just described, Spirit, and this is past the fangirls, the spirit to spirit, you are that. You are doing that because for where you stand right now, with the power that you have in your community circle life, you have opened that up. You have changed your fight from a fight to a fight from
Mm.
here for expression, for a trance. What is that called when you, it's almost like alchemy, alchemized that fight into from a form of fight to love to express that. And all of those things were important. All of those experiences, to have all those different cultures and exposure that you did for you to be able to express that and to give everybody that chance to express that. I realized how, in doing what I was doing too, when I was doing the lives, how we all want to have a moment to express our passion and our love and our, what we want to. And if we're doing movements like this, it's so much more impactful than just for show or for money or for power. So your intention for this is not to show, is not to make a name for yourself, is to give a platform for people to talk. You know what I mean? Not that we would love for that to happen too, but because then you would be able to use that power for more. But it's like what they said, with more responsibility comes more, what is it? More, what is it? That Spider-Man thing, more
I should
power
know.
comes more responsibility. That's what it is. With more power comes more responsibility. So what you're given with right now, you are doing that. And I think just to what you were saying, to wrap on it too, is sometimes you're not seeing what you're doing right away. Martin Luther King didn't get to see his fight, what it created, what his death created. We don't get to see it right away. And I think about a lot of people who have a long term goal. They don't always get to see it right away. Sometimes you're doing it for the generations to come after you. And so what your mom and their crew and I love that. I know who that is. I don't know her personally, but I know who she is. I can show you her on my Facebook. um I what they did created such an impact that you're able to do what you're doing. Imagine with your son, and if you have any future other children's coming, what they're gonna do. You know? Yeah, we're waiting for the daughter next, Spirit.
Please bring all of your amazing sprinkles of power to that conversation. Oh my goodness. I let me let me just, as I ask you this question, to give information to the Roots of the Spirit community and listeners all over the world, which blows my mind and I'm extremely grateful for, and I do not take for granted. Where can folks get in touch with you and
So
learn
right
more
now,
about you? Join All Things Possible, all of the things.
yes, thank you. Okay, so right now, I was just gonna say, I really am just on All Things Possible. I am in the stage where this is why you are the first jump off. I know usually when I do something like this afterwards, my spirit will come and says, next. So I don't know what is absolutely right next, but if to stay on, to share vibe, encouragement, I like to say inspiration, um, and some positivity too, because we all sometimes need it. Is to check out on Facebook All Things Possible, the group. I have it set right now where you have to ask for an invite because all these bots are on our group spamming them like crazy. But or just Prudence Kalu on Facebook. If you find me, that's where actually I do most of my sharing, and would love for people to share to their experience with me and us. And so we learn from each other. That's really what I believe in. I believe we all learn from each other. There's sometimes I've been in a belief from the church days where I believe in what I believe in so strong I will die for it. And 2 years later, something happens and it shifts my belief, and I no longer believe that no more, but I believe this, and I believe it until I will die for it. And then something happens, and I realize, oh, our beliefs are always changing too. So it's good to involve yourself around people who is open to that idea and don't have and think and expect you to believe in one specific way, but to share all of our beliefs because we can all learn from each other. That's the purpose of my group at this moment, and we will see where it's going to take us.
Well, thank you so much for inviting everyone into your magical transformational world. I just want to say from the bottom of my heart, what you exude and radiate is so powerful. So powerful. There have been so many times where, I'm in a funk or not feeling my best and not feeling as though I'm on the right path, all of that. And then I will look to all things possible, and you can completely reshift my energy and refocus me to like my natural state of love and compassion. And I will tell you like how powerful you are. The shirt that I have on, which this is audio, folks will not be able to see
Yes.
it, seems very, very trivial, but I selected what I was going to wear because of you giving me permission to be myself. For me wanting to come to this conversation, embodying what I'm trying to talk about, authenticity, courage, and truth.
Oh
Like
my God,
you
you're gonna make me
are
cry.
like a guiding star in my life, and
I
we've
want to tell
never
you,
met.
people are not seeing the video to this, but I was able, oh, this is so beautiful. I'm really, I was able to come because usually I am one to always want to have my makeup done. I've always been like that. It's for myself mostly. But I absolutely felt comfortable coming to you this morning in my bare face. Well, I have earrings and a necklace on, but to come to you comfortably, authentically, that's so crazy that we wrapped right up so beautifully with that. That is how you give the space to be also. So I appreciate so much. And I'm almost to the point where I don't even care if anybody sees now because you make me feel so comfortable also. So I appreciate just your presence in my life. The gods know what they were doing when we get introduced to certain people. So thank you too.
I
I
am just
absolutely love
shining.
you.
I love you too. And it's so wild. I was going to open up by telling you, I was like, do you know I love you? And do you know like you're my complete soul sister? And we've literally never met. So I am going to let you go. But before I do, Prudence, what are the roots of your spirit?
You said it at the beginning of this conversation, Spirit. Authenticity. The root of my spirit is to be authentic as I possibly can. I find that every single time, whether it be on the phone or in person, on a pass by, when I'm authentic, people show me their authenticity, and the love is genuine. It is not a pretense. I feel like being authentic is the highest vibration, and I can get the person who is the most angriest and hateful in the room to bring it down a notch by being authentic with them. And once they feel that, they give it back to me. So I'd encourage everybody in my spirit to remember to be authentic in everything we're doing and every passion that you have, not for you really checking yourself and see what is it you're doing, what you're doing for.
This is a dream conversation.
Same.
From the bottom of my heart. Thank you so, so, so much.
I cannot wait to share with everybody else because I absolutely loved it so much. I love you so much. I cannot wait to come to one of your retreats and to have more conversations with you and your collective friends as well.